Well, aloha, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise here in Honolulu, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji in another time zone.
That's right. All the way from the East Coast in Columbus, Ohio, again, following the UH men's volleyball team. A lot going on, of course, here with them. But of course, we want to focus on our guests here today on Spotlight Hawaii. Senator Mazie Hirono joining us now here in this conversation. Good morning, Senator. Thanks so much for joining us.
Morning, Ryan and Yanji.
Want to start off with the vaccine if we can. We know that there is, of course, the opportunity for those in Hawaii 16 and over to get the vaccine. But on a national level, that conversation that is being had right now, many people and experts saying that the U.S. may not reach herd immunity because people are reluctant to get that vaccination shot. What are your thoughts about where we're as a country and as a state with the overall vaccine?
Compared to where we were at the end of the previous administration, we are really approaching I would say several milestones to have, I don't know what it is, 40, 50% of the adults in our country vaccinated. And yes, we need to do to have more vaccinated in order to reach herd immunity. I cannot tell you what the concerns are. There are a whole bunch of apparently Trump supporters who say they're not going to get vaccinated. And I'd say with the variants out there that they could very well test positive and get the virus and get sick. And then there may be others who have other reasons. But I think we just need to continue to put out the science and the safety of getting a vaccine. And I'm really glad that in Hawaii, I think we have major participation in terms of the wearing of masks and washing of hands and social distancing, because in Hawaii, I do think that we have the values of taking care of not just ourselves, but others. It helps a lot. And so it does hurt me to know that there are so many millions in our country who refuse to get vaccinated, but we can't give up.
What are your thoughts on the idea of a vaccine mandate? There are some private organizations now that are mandating that, and for years now, schools have required, for instance, MMR, mumps, measles, and rubella vaccines for students and staff. What are your thoughts about having a vaccine mandate when it comes to COVID-19 vaccines?
I think that with all of the millions of people who are already resisting, and as we saw, they've politicized even the wearing of masks and washing of hands. Can you imagine what would happen if we mandate everyone to be vaccinated? I am not there yet. We need to provide all the other ways that we can encourage people to get vaccinated. Sad to say that this issue has become politicized. Who knew that wearing a mask would be deemed of a political issue that everybody has to make a statement on? Clearly, as we go forward, we will probably have other pandemics. And we need to have a society which is much better educated and understanding of what it means if we don't do our part to stop another pandemic from overtaking our country. But in the meantime, we have this one, COVID-19 and its variants. And I am continuing to do those things that will encourage people to get vaccinated.
On the subject of mask wearing, we know that the CDC continues to adjust guidelines that were initially instituted at the beginning of the pandemic, recently making more recommendations regarding mask wearing that you mentioned. Governor Ige, we talked to him on Monday about any changes to what the state is now requiring as far as a mask mandate, and he doesn't want any changes regardless of if you're vaccinated or if you're outside. What are your thoughts on where the state is with the mask mandate? And do you believe that the state should be following more of the direction of the CDC and recommendations?
I think the state has very much been taking the responsible action by looking at science, looking at the facts on the ground as to what is the safest course for our state. And yes, they do look at the CDC guidelines. But as I said, it's what's happening on the ground in the state that should also factor in. And I personally will continue to not be in crowded areas, and I will continue to do social distancing and the things that I think we each take responsibility for.
May, as we know, is Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and recently you sponsored legislation that then passed to protect Asian Americans against hate crimes. Tell us a little bit about this legislation and what inspired you to take this move.
There's been a significant rise in hate crimes targeting Asian American Pacific Islanders. And so in the time of this pandemic, that's what's been happening. And so we've all seen the news coverage of people being kicked, being beaten. And there were horrific incidents just recently in San Francisco, as well as in New York City. So these kinds of unprovoked attacks against AAPIs, many of them are women, many of them are older AAPI community members, that we've all seen it, and we had to do something about it. And my COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which was jointly sponsored by Grace Ming on the House side, is to call attention to what we can do. First of all, we should have data as to the extent of these kinds of crimes, which are highly, highly underreported, and the kinds of incidents that should also be reported. And so this is what I consider to be a non-controversial bill, although at the beginning I could not get a single Republican to sponsor it. But as we began to, as the bill percolated on the floor of the Senate, and the senators knew, both Republicans and Democrats knew, that we were going to have a debate and a vote on this bill, then there was an opportunity for me to work with Susan Collins in particular in a bipartisan way to garner more broad support for this bill while maintaining the intent of the bill, which is pretty simple. It requires the Attorney General to assign someone within the Attorney General's office to review these hate crimes and to work with state and local law enforcement to create a platform for people to be able to report these crimes. So I'm glad that it ultimately passed in a 94-1 vote. It shows that when the Democrats and Republicans can come together in good faith, I mean, that is the operative term here, in good faith, to get something done, you can get something done in a bipartisan way. But obviously, there are a lot more things that we have to do, because just because you have a bill like this, which the House will take up, doesn't mean that it's going to change the hearts and minds of all these people who bear an animus toward Asian American Pacific Islanders, who for a long time have felt invisible, and who have always been deemed the other, the perpetual foreigners. I'm really glad that I see so many AAPI people on the news, more than I've ever seen ever, speaking out in solidarity with the AAPI community. And this bill was an opportunity for the Senate to stand up and say, we stand with the AAPI community against these kinds of crimes. So those are important aspects of this bill that I'm really glad garnered the kind of support that it did.
Yeah, we know that the president also credited you for being able to get that large majority, and said that you can go ahead and work on all the legislation moving forward in the Senate, giving you a lot of credit.
Where did you hear that?
But it's sad to think, though, that with all that is happening with this community, that legislation has to go through in order for things. It's sad that we've gotten to this point. But on that point, how else do you think that these types of crimes can stop? Because for those in Hawaii, we don't necessarily see that. Obviously, a large population of Hawaii are those Asian and Pacific Islanders, and so we don't necessarily are seeing that in our home state. But throughout the country, we are seeing that. What else do you think can be done to just stop this beyond just the legislation that is going through?
Clearly, one part of it is an education aspect of it, that the AAPI communities, many of us have been here for generations. We are not the other. We are a part and parcel of making our America what it is. And so the history of Asians in our country and the discrimination that has been directed against the Asian community with laws like the Chinese Exclusion Act, clearly the incarceration of 120,000 Asian Americans, the Muslim ban, that was one of the first things that President Trump did, that these kinds of actions, discriminatory actions, should not be happening in our country. There is an education aspect to it. so that we can begin to change the hearts and minds of people in this country to embrace diversity, cultural diversity, as I think we do to a huge extent in Hawaii. And all of these kinds of aspects have to happen. And more recently, there are the Asian American businesses have come together, and they've created a foundation with over $200 million that they will put to combating hate crimes against Asian Americans. So that is a really good thing. And a couple of the foundation members are people that I know, like Daniel Day Kim, who definitely has roots in Hawaii. And I've been talking with him about some of these issues. There's a lot that each of us can do.
Let's talk a little bit about the economy here in Hawaii. You know, our unemployment rate right now is around 9%, and we're starting to see visitors come back in droves, all that pent-up demand that people have talked about. What are your concerns, though, for a long-term recovery of Hawaii when it comes to the economy? When do you think we'll really feel the full force of the recovery dollars that was planned earlier, passed earlier this year? And what are you concerned about moving forward so that 9% goes down to where it once was? You know, we were hovering around 2% pre-pandemic.
Yes. We went from among the lowest unemployment rates to one of the highest, if not the highest, and it's because we are very reliant on tourism. Tourism will come back when we can have a lot more people vaccinated, and also the travelers from abroad are also vaccinated. This is a worldwide pandemic, and to get control of this pandemic requires us to do so not just in our country, but in other countries where we have visitors. So it is a all-out effort to get people vaccinated. That is, to me, the key in safely reopening the tourism industry, and therefore helping our businesses who rely on tourism, is getting vaccinated. So, I mean, I cannot say it strongly enough. Everyone in Hawaii and throughout our country, when it's your turn to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. That is how we're going to reopen our schools safely. That is how we're going to reopen our economy. Of course, I think the other thing that things that really have helped is the rescue package that pumped literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the Hawaii economy. It's really helping. It's helping people with children. It's helping individuals who don't make enough money. It's certainly helping the people who are relying on unemployment insurance. But the next step to get our economy going is the infrastructure program, as well as the family program, to enable women in particular through the family program to get back to work, because millions of them left the job force to take care of their children and their families during this pandemic.
I want to expand a little more on that infrastructure bill that the president is pushing for right now. What do you think the chances of that moving through are right now, knowing in your conversations that you're having with your colleagues and those who work through the legislative bodies of both the House and the Senate? Do you think that this is a realistic goal and a bill that will likely see a passage?
It is a realistic bill in that the need is great. And this bill that President Biden wants us to push through is supported by bipartisan in the country. The Democrats, Republicans, and independents support the kind of big bipartisan bill, big family support bill that we're contemplating. The people who aren't for it are the Republicans in the House and Senate. They are very much out of touch with the rest of America in terms of recognizing the need. So when you ask, what are the chances of getting a big bill that's necessary through, when you have a Mitch Mcconnell saying that he's not going to have the richest people in our country pay their fair share of taxes, including the corporations, some of whom don't pay anything, that doesn't create a scenario where we're going to be able to come to some kind of a compromise on the bill. So my view is that we do not have all kinds of time in order to pass this kind of job creation bill. And if the Republicans do not come forward in good faith to work with us, then we Democrats are going to have to figure out some other approaches to get it done, because the people in our country are counting on us.
You know, when people here in Hawaii hear about legislation like that, it sounds like so much money, and it sounds sort of like these goals that are so far away. But can you tell people here at home what this could actually mean for them? What kind of infrastructure projects are we talking about here at home, and what kind of jobs could we see come out of it?
For the infrastructure, most of us think of infrastructure as roads, bridges, highways, and clearly we have those in our state that are in need of repair and upgrading. So there's that. When we talk about infrastructure and getting our economy back on track, we're also talking about the need to support our families. And so we are we're the only advanced country that does not provide paid family leave. How are women in our state and our country supposed to go back to work? So we need to think expansively, in my view, about what constitutes the kind of infrastructure that will enable us to go back to work. So we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar project. And this is nothing new. We have recognized the need for family leave, paid family leave for a long, long time. And we've certainly recognized the need in every state for support for infrastructure. And even Trump recognized it, but his plan was minimal because he basically wanted the states to come up with the money, which just is ridiculous. So these are long-awaited programs and projects that need to be funded at a time when we're still in the midst of a pandemic.
We know
the
that
kind
one
of jobs that will be created, well, clearly in the construction trades, and I just talked to the Workforce Development Council here just a few days ago, and the kind of jobs that will be created will be obviously in the energy sector and in the healthcare sector. So there's money to retrain people and to connect up with the needs of our business community with the kind of jobs that people are trained for.
We know that one of those projects that would likely be included, or many hope will be included, is the rail project. I wanted to get your thoughts on where we're at right now with rail. We know that the cost of this project continues to balloon, and there is much concern over how the city will be able to fund this project all the way to Ala Moana. What are your thoughts moving forward on what the rail project should look like, and how much do you think the federal government will be able to play a part in helping to see that come to fruition?
When the federal government and the state of Hawaii entered into the agreement back in 2012, thereabouts, Senator Inoue was still alive. That was supposed to be it, that the federal government would provide something in the order of $1.5 billion for this rail project, and the county would come up with the rest. The cost overrun has been tremendous. There was money put into the rescue package, some $70 million in the rescue package for HART, along with other transit projects across the country. We cannot look to the federal government to provide the kind of funding that we're going to need to fund a project that has gone from $5.5 billion to something in the order of $11 billion. I expect that the mayor and the council are HART is going to have to go back to the legislature and ask for an extension of a GAT taxes. So I certainly haven't gotten involved in the design aspects, the selection of contractors and all of that. I have been very focused on making sure that the federal portion of of HART will be there, and there are some issues along those lines because of some changes to the where the rail will go and all of that. So those things will need to be worked out.
Is it, when we've talked to Senator Schatz about this issue before, he said basically don't look to the federal government for that full bailout. It sounds like you're saying the same.
Yes, when we entered into the full faith agreement back then, that was pretty much it. That was supposed to be the parameters of the federal role in supporting HART.
I want to go back and talk a little more about the relationship that we see right now between Democrats and Republicans in the Senate and on the House side. There obviously is a lot of disagreement and on many issues, and there from the outside, for many constituents and people within your district, they might see that as lawmakers just continue to argue and fight. How do you find any common ground between? Seems to be a lot of butting of heads. What do you think it's going to take for there to be more synergy, more collaboration, cooperation to see more meaningful legislation passed for moving forward?
to require more bipartisan collaboration requires two to tango. And so I know for a fact that the Democrats would welcome good faith overtures from the Republicans. But let me give you an example in terms of the infrastructure plan and how Joe Biden would want to pay for it. Mitch McConnell has already said he basically doesn't want the richest people in our country and corporations to pay their fair share of taxes so that we can pay for the infrastructure plan and the family plan. So you have that. When you have one side saying we're not even going to go there, or their proposal for this multi-trillion-dollar program that is very needed is a 600 or 700 billion-dollar program that doesn't even go toward meeting the needs in our country. So they're not thinking big at all. Mitch McConnell's goal in life, and I don't want to politicize things, but it is what it is. Mitch McConnell wants to take back the Senate, which means that he is not going to be very eager to support President Biden's initiatives and priorities, nor is he going to support what the Democrats in the House and Senate want to do. In spite of the fact that these programs are very much supported. And by the way, did you notice that some of the Republicans who didn't even vote for the rescue plan are putting out statements in their own states saying, oh, by the way, all you restaurants, we now have a restaurant rescue program. They had nothing to do with it. So they tried to take credit for that, which they did not have any part in supporting. So as far as I'm concerned, we know the need is there. We know that these programs are supported by people in the Democrats, Republicans out there in US of A and independents. And my view is that we're going to need to get it done with or without the Republicans. I would prefer we do it with them, but they need to meet us in good faith.
We know that you're incredibly busy, and somehow in all of your, all of your work, you've still found time to write a new memoir. Can you tell us about your book? What inspired you to do this now, and what's the story that you wanted to tell?
My book is titled Heart of Fire, and it very much is the story of my mother. I decided to write a memoir. It's taken about 2 years of my life because my mother has suffered 2 strokes and was not able to communicate very well. And I decided this was a time for me to tell her story and that of my grandmother who raised me. And so her Heart of Fire, some of which I hope I got, is one of courage, risk-taking. My mother totally changed my life by bringing me to this country. I think this book has a lot of aspects to it that people can relate to. Of course, there are a lot of immigrants who share my kind of immigrant story of coming here with nothing and not speaking the language or anything. Women who have experienced being told, not your turn, you can't do it, you can't win. People who have been in maybe relationships that have not been as positive as they could be, and to come to realize it. And also there are millions of people in our country who have healthcare challenges, and to know that there is a U.S. Senator who has a stage 4 cancer diagnosis and is battling cancer, they can relate to that. So my hope is that there are a lot of people who can relate to different aspects of my book and that it will have meaning for them.
Our time is running up here, but we did want to provide you an opportunity to have one last statement. Maybe if you can talk to, when we look at this, and we were talking before we went live here, when you look at the amount of issues that our country is tackling, and also on a global level, there's just a lot that's happening, and there's a lot of people that are worried about our future.
Yes.
I wonder what your just final thoughts are moving forward, being a leader, not only for the state of Hawaii, but also for our country. How do you think we heal as a country? And what are some of the things that you feel we can do to help to create a brighter future, so to speak, for everyone?
Our country is divided. I'm grateful to represent a state like Hawaii where the kind of racial animosity that we see too often on the mainland is not very prevalent here. I'm really grateful for that we appreciate our diversity and our plate lunch, mixed plate culture. Going forward, I think that part of what will heal our country is to provide the sort of support to get our economy back, to make sure that all the people in our country, as Joe Biden said, he's representing all of America, not just the people who voted for him. That is a huge, huge orientation that the prior guy didn't have. And so to have a president who says, I will take responsibility to get this pandemic under control, we will propose legislation that will move this country forward into the future, it gives me hope. It gives me hope. And also to be very grateful for Hawaii and how we treat each other in Hawaii. I wish that kind of way of relating and treating each other is something that happens on the mainland. We'll work on it.
Well, we thank you for your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us, such a broad conversation about all that you're working on, and for telling us about your new memoir. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Be kind.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Ryan, always good to hear from the senator. It's amazing to me all that she does, and that she had time to write this memoir. And the reviews on it are quite powerful. A lot of people really say that this is an amazing feminist story. It's an immigrant story, and there's also some information or some stories in there about her. The negotiations that happened on Washington. One reviewer called it a burn book for some of those senators on there. So it's got a little something for everyone, it sounds like. We do encourage you to check it out. Heart of Fire is what it's called. And we do appreciate the senator's time this morning.
Yeah, learning a lot about some of the things that she's gone through, but also what's happening right now in the country. And of course, her encouragement to people to continue to get the vaccination as we hear about those the possibility that the United States may not reach that herd immunity because there's so much hesitancy here on the mainland of people who are not wanting to get the vaccine, but are also making comments about HEART and the rail project, also in line with what we're hearing from the other members of the Hawaii delegation, saying that, hey, if you're looking for the federal government for money to build out this project, you're going to have to look elsewhere. They recognize that there is a need, but saying that it is not realistic that the federal government is just going to come in and write a check for the remaining balance that's due for this project.
Yeah, so how is Rail going to tackle that? We are going to be talking to Lori Kahikina, who is the interim CEO of HEART, a week from today, next Wednesday. And then on Friday, Colleen Hanabusa has agreed to join us. She, of course, has been awarded a consulting contract for the project, and part of her responsibility will be to figure out the bottom line. How are they going to make up that deficit? So she'll be joining us on Friday next week. But this Friday, Ryan, we're also talking about another mode of transportation, and that is Beaky.
Yeah, many people have heard about the financial struggles that the Beaky Bike Share program faces now because of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, this was a program that was launched that was very successful. Many people using it to, of course, get to work and around town, also being used by many visitors to the island. But because of COVID-19, obviously those numbers have dropped. And we wanted to hear from the CEO what that future looks like, what they're going to need to do in order to stay in operation. We have heard calls from certain individuals in the community, as well as groups that are calling on the city and the mayor to actually help fund this program. And so we want to get a better glimpse of some of the issues that are facing the Beaky program. Again, that conversation will be on Friday.
So until then, we ask you to have a great rest of your week. Thank you for joining us. One last plug for Ryan in Ohio. Ryan, what are you doing and how can we follow you?
Well, we are getting ready for that national semifinal match between Hawaii and UC Santa Barbara. That is taking place tomorrow. Again, I'm traveling with the Hawaii team. We've been posting updates on the Hawaii Athletics platforms throughout the week. There's a lot happening here in Ohio. And for the first time, Hawaii will be able to play in front of fans this season. That will be happening tomorrow. So a lot of family, as well as some local residents coming up here to Colorado to cheer on the Bows. Again, that match is happening tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern time. So that would be 11 o'clock back in Hawaii. You can catch the game on ncaa.com.
Okay, and we look forward to that. Remember to follow Ryan through the social media platforms of the University of Hawaii Athletics. We will join you back here on Friday with Tom Bollinger of Beaky. Until then, stay safe, wear a mask, get vaccinated if you can, and we'll see you right back here on Friday. Aloha.
Aloha.